The violence doesn't lead to a great deal of change, but I'm sorry, it does lead to some. Sometimes the only way you can get their attention is tear up some stuff.
I'm here with Phillip Walker. Phillip, thank you for making the time.
Thank you for having me, Marcus.
A pleasure. So it's now end of July 2020. How have the last few months been for you?
It's been very, very unusual. I've been locked down. I'm 70 years old and an African-American male, so I'm scared to go out. This is my first time going out since the lockdown started in California.
So first time out in 3.5 months?
Yeah, since the NBA. When the NBA went down, I was like, uh-oh, this is serious.
Oh my gosh, well I hope it will make it worth it for you.
Yeah, yes indeed.
How has it been watching everything that's going on? I mean, what was your earliest memory in America in terms of the significant pieces of black history?
Well, I was blessed enough to have parents that taught us to be conscious, taught us to be aware. So I realized what was happening pretty young, age 6, age 8, I realized what was happening. But when I really got it was the day after Martin Luther King was assassinated.
And how old were you then?
I was in high school. I was a senior in high school, had just started doing drama. So what are you, 18 years old, getting ready to go to college, right?
And how did you feel about that at the age of 18, seeing Dr. King assassinated?
It was pretty heavy. People talk about it today like it was some kind of glorious thing. No, it was, one, the event itself was heavy, super heavy, but the times were heavy. We had no idea what was going to happen. Just like today, we really don't know what the end of this process is, Well, back in 1968, we didn't have any idea who was going to be killed next. And as you know, Bobby got killed soon after that. And
sure.
It was a crazy time.
I can only imagine. And what was the experience of segregation like when you were young?
I grew up in Chicago. And the North was not supposed to be segregated. But Chicago had to be the most segregated place
really?
in all of America. They just did it economically. They set it up that way. So
what do you mean by that?
Well, you couldn't be in that neighborhood because you couldn't live in that neighborhood, no matter how much money you had. So they had a neighborhood and we had a neighborhood, and never the twain did meet.
And
That's
how did you feel about that?
It was part of the program,
Okay,
you
that's
just
good.
kind of accept it. You can't do anything about it. Well, you think you can't do anything about it. You actually can. And so we just, we were taught to accept it. But as the rioting started and the protesting and such, Dr. King came to Chicago, for instance.
And did you happen to see him live?
Place. Yes, I did.
And what was it like
actually
seeing?
Played Dr. Martin Luther King in a one-man play. I performed him for 25 years in every state in America, and that's how I responded. I used my art to attempt to do whatever I could to help things get better. I did a great deal of work on helping the nation agree to celebrate the Martin Luther King birthday, for instance. I traveled around the nation with this one-man play about the history of black leaders, and took it to the kids in the schools and said, you should go home and tell your parents to tell the legislator to accept this holiday. And it actually worked in a couple of states.
And that's very powerful, using your art for that. Which states did it work in?
We were New Hampshire was the last state in America to agree to celebrate the Martin Luther King holiday, and that was my target state. I worked New Hampshire and worked New Hampshire and worked New Hampshire all the way from California until I had convinced the kids to go. That's how we did it. We did it from the inside, not from protesting from the outside. That would have never worked in New Hampshire, right? We did it from the inside. We sent the children home and got them to ask their parents, well, is this fair? Is this?
Very interesting, very interesting. Philip, how do you feel about the anger we're seeing amongst the black community, particularly the younger parts of the black community, in terms of the protests, the riot, even the violence which is arising, and these incredibly strong reactions to what's happening?
Well, this anger that you refer to, this passion that you refer to, it's been happening in my community since I was a little kid. This is actually nothing new to me. We have very little space, the African American. We have very little space in which to live, in which to move, in which to express ourselves, right? And so what's happening now, and it's wonderful, it's glorious, and we can thank people like you. We can thank the media for making this possible, because what's going on is y'all now see it. It's always been happening,
Right.
but it's now happening in a venue that can be seen by the majority.
And now it's being seen. How much positive change can violence lead to?
The violence doesn't lead to a great deal of change, but it does lead to some.
What kind of change?
We are a violent country. We were born being violent against the King of England. He invested all the money and stuff and set all this stuff up.
I'm sorry about that on behalf of my people.
Hey, it's what it is. It's the history. It's where we come from, right? And so when they took the tea and threw it into the bay, that was an act of violence, right? They were destroying the king's stuff, how
Yes.
he made money, right? But it was just, because the cause was just. Same thing today. The cause is just. And sometimes the only way you can get the authorities that you have no power over, sometimes the only way you can get their attention is tear up some stuff.
So violence as a method to getting to peace, to waking people up, to the revolution.
Yes, it does work. I wish it didn't. I wish that we could learn to listen to each other and act like advanced human beings and solve our problems. But sometimes that just doesn't work. And young people are impatient. I was impatient when I was that little kid giving that speech in high school, right? Young people are impatient, so when you hear talk, like our Congress, they sit around and talk, our president, they just sit around and talk, they don't do anything. It sometimes will encourage one's emotion to get very high. And since we're in a bit of a police state, if the citizens' emotions are high against authority, that's going to incite violence.
As someone who saw Dr. King when you were 18 years old, and as you spent over 2 decades of your professional career as an actor playing Dr. King, what do you believe his response would be if he saw this violent reaction today?
He would abhor the violence, because another technique that works is nonviolent. So what? It's weird. Both of those extremes work? Yes. Some people do not believe in allowing, whatever the situation is, and allowing them to be violent. But the truth of the matter is, everywhere Dr. King went, everywhere, including the March on Washington, there was violence. Now, he didn't do any of the violence, but his presence caused people to be violent.
Challenging times.
Yeah, how about that?
And challenging methods as a way to get to peace.
Yeah, and it's worked. It worked in India. It has worked.
I understand it worked in India to get the English out.
Absolutely.
Although Gandhi
Absolutely.
took the more of the non-violent approach.
Yes, well, that's what I'm saying. The nonviolent approach absolutely does work, and there are perpetrators of that approach, just like there are perpetrators of the more violent approach.
Philip, if you have a message for the black community, specifically the younger members of the community, what would it be?
Don't stop, y'all. Don't stop. No matter what happens, you will lose a lot. But remember, it's a long fight, And the longer you stick with it, the more you will win.
Phillip Walker, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for doing this work. We appreciate it more than you know.
A pleasure. It's my honor.